So far, I've been guiding you along this exercise for week 2, the 02.1 exercise we've already done to create your homepage, and the one I'm guiding you through is 02.2, the CSS Designer, the CSS review exercise that will eventually look like this image here. It's going to be yellow back. So far we have started on the recipe, we have uploaded some images, and we're just getting the rest of the stack together. I'm going to open up a new page and visit what I have so far, my username dot github.io, idtsu20.github.io. I'll click on week 2 CSS Designer, and here's the page. One thing that I noticed since I last recorded this though is that notice how the background is moving along with the rest of the text. That's not supposed to happen in the final, but we still can fix it really quick. I'll just go back to the directions, open up the recipe, and here it is again, the Google Docs. We're missing, or I'm missing in my directions, I did not tell you how to do these two steps, that it should not repeat and that it should stay fixed. So we'll fix that first, and then we're going to start to add the semantic elements, at least get the header, the navigation, and some of these others, the footer for sure, that's also semantic. So the basic things, we're going to at least get the skeleton of the code going. And for that, I'm going to go and load up GitHub, GitHub.com, and sign in. Actually, I'm already signed in, so here's my repository, itsu20, that's my username.github.io, and I'm going to go into week 2 and open up styles.css. That's the file that we're most interested in right now. We're just changing the CSS, and the parts that I'm missing, let's see, let's talk about this real quick. We are missing the part where it says that the background image should not repeat and that it should stay fixed. So let's see, what does not repeat mean? Well, we're just going to add into the code that we're working with, the background repeat will be repeat, no repeat. The values are here in the description at W3 Schools, repeat and no repeat. Here's no repeat right here. So rather than saying just no, it will be no hyphen repeat with the command background repeat. Let's add that right now. Well, before I do anything, why don't I open up the file for editing? I'll click anywhere, press Control A to copy, Control C to copy, Control A to select all, Control C to copy. And then open up another tab and go into my CodeMan. CodeMan.io. And I'm already signed in. I will look at my dashboard. Here's my assignment 2. I'll click on it, and it's already showing me the code on the left, and CSS is right there. So I don't need to copy the code since it's the same one, so that's good. I'm going to then put in what I'm missing. I'm going to put in a background repeat colon. So that's background hyphen repeat colon, and we said it's going to be a no hyphen repeat, so it stays in the same place, and then a semicolon because that's the end of the line. We were also missing one more thing, and that was the fact that it should stay fixed. And what that means is just that the background attachment, where is it going to stay? It's going to stay fixed. I'll just copy that right here rather than typing it. Select everything and right click copy, go back to the assignment and just paste it in where it fits. Control V as in Victor would have done the same thing. While I'm here, I will click somewhere, press Control A to select all, and then Control C to copy. You could also right click and copy. And this code that's corrected now, I can go back into my GitHub, and since I'm already editing this, I'm just going to press Control A to select all, the backspace, delete key, and then Control V as in Victor to paste. Then I can save it by committing the changes. I'll go right back into it to reload it. I'll go back to the files that I have opened, these tabs with the W3 information. I don't need them open. And hopefully that's going to give me enough time to go back to my page online and reload and see if anything happened. Not yet. See how it's still scrolling? Let me right click and see how the source looks like. This is the HTML. Inside the HTML, I can click on styles.css, and then I'll see that the code has not been updated yet. I've reloaded it, and now I see background repeat as no repeat. The background attachment is fixed. So I can close this that I just opened, and I'm going to close this that I just opened, and I'll see about reloading the CSS Designer, because now it should have the code. Now when I'm scrolling down, see the content scrolls, but the background image remains fixed in the same location. So that's some advancement, and at least we have corrected this, and we can move on to the next thing. This is what I mean by semantic elements, and I'll put in a link about where you can read more about semantic elements, which were or should have been covered in Web 1. Header is a semantic element that tells us that we're going to be working with the part of the document that's up at the top, the header. It used to be that you could have a division, call it anything you wanted, and then assign it to be the header. But now you can have the actual word header be just that. What does that mean to us right now? Well, it means that if you look at the HTML, and I'll open it up again, when we go down the HTML code and we see how the page is built, we have these semantic elements. The head is up here. Body is a semantic element. It's describing what's going on the right. The navigation is just nav. That's this. Even though we don't see buttons, we know that this will have buttons eventually. So the nav's already there. That tells me also that at some point we're going to be adding a nav code into the CSS. But since the recipe calls for the header next, and that's right here, the header, you see it's just blank header, I'm going to then say to the CSS, I guess I was already there, that since we already defined the body, we can continue by selecting the header. So I'm just going to type the word header, open up a bracket, press enter, and go to the next page. I'll slide down to the end of the code and press enter again. I'll see what the CSS Designer is holding for us. There's CSS, and then there's going to be a container ID for a section element, and that'll come in a little bit. I'm going to skip that one for now, but I know we're going to have nav. So nav, I can start to type in, not necessarily the code, but just sort of a placeholder. I know that nav will be in the code, so I can type in nav, open up a bracket, press enter, and go down just to give me some space. There's nothing here, so nothing will stop the code from running. There's no errors yet because there's no code. We also are going to have a content ID for article, and we'll deal with that later. The footer is also a semantic element, so I'll say that we'll have code for footer here at some point, and give me some space. It's reminding me to save. I'll do that now. And I have some other elements with h1 and a pseudo class, but for now, this should get me started with the rest of the code. Header, we're going to set the font size to 350, and that's exactly what it means, that when we come into the header space here, that things in the header, which is the CSS Designer right here, will grow to be 350% larger. So I can put in the code font hyphen size colon 350%, and then a semicolon at the end of the line. Now this takes the whole header space and makes it larger. what our recipe calls for is that the H1 selector is what needs to grow. So in order to make a better assignment of that, after header is mentioned in the code, we have to say header H1 so that it's limited only to the H1 element inside of header. And now that's happened right here really quick. In the code, we'll set the color to be this. It's a hexadecimal value. I'll right click and copy this. Anytime you see a hexadecimal color, you can Google it if you want. And you should get a result to see what it looks like. It's a reddish tint. So that's what you can expect when you change the code to say that in the next line, the color, colon, will be, I'll press Ctrl V to paste, and semicolon to end the line. It's going to be this reddish that it has now. I'm moving on to the next line and seeing the next thing in the recipe. The padding will be set to 40 pixels and the left padding will be set to 120 pixels. There's multiple ways of doing this, but the easiest way is to just follow, right, at least for now, what the recipe says. It says to assign the padding in the header to be 40 pixels, so padding colon 40px semicolon. And notice how we have 40 pixels on top, on the left, below, and to the right. But we said that we wanted 120 on the left. So let's do then the padding hyphen left colon to be 120px semicolon. And now we have additional space. It respected the 40 pixels that we already had, but it then reset it to 120 from the left, keeping the 40 from the right. It still has 40 from this side, which, you know, we don't really need much with it, but it's fine. It's not hurting anybody. So that will allow the image to show whenever we load it up. The next thing in the recipe is to set the background image to be header image 1. I'm going to copy the name, highlight everything, right click and copy, and we want that to be the background image in the H1 element. So in the next line, background hyphen image colon, and then the name that I just copied, semicolon. I'll bring this a little bit closer here. I got enough space. And although I just sort of dumped it there, background image, we've already have a background image. Remember what we did before? The background image is colon, then the URL symbol here, and then open parentheses, quote, the name of the file, close quotes, close parentheses. So following that convention, I can say URL, parentheses, open up quotes, and then at the end of the file name, close the quotes, close the parentheses, and then we have the semicolon. I don't see it here because we are in CodeMan, but when we take this code back to GitHub, it will be able to see it as soon as it loads. And this thing should not repeat. Remember, we already did a not repeat. So let's take advantage of the fact that we already typed it. Background repeat, no repeat. I'm going to highlight that code, right click and copy. Come back to my code at the bottom, press enter, and then Control V as in Victor to paste. And now there will be no repeat in that image. So I did the rest of header here. And the next thing will be the container, and then we're going to do the nav. So the container ID and section we'll do next. But before we move forward, let's check and see what our page is looking like. And I'm going to save what I have in CodeMan. I'm going to click in the CSS, press Control A to select all, and Control C to copy. Once it's copied, I can go back to GitHub, and I'm already working on the CSS file. I'll click anywhere in the CSS, press Control A to select all, and then Control V to paste. That replaces everything that's in there. And I'll scroll to the bottom and click Commit Changes to save the file. Once it's saved, as I've told you before, we have to wait a little bit to see what happens. I'll go back to my page. I'll right click and view the page source, and then click on styles.css and reload. And I'll wait, I don't know, a good 15 to 30 seconds, and I'll come back to the video and see if it's still working. Actually, it's been about a minute. Let me come back and reload the code. It's now showing me the header and all the code that we've added. I'll close this and close the HTML as well, and come back to the page and reload the page and see what's happened. Now I have my CSS Designer, just like as it was promised. It's red, it's larger, it's got the image on the space left on the left, and we have the rest of the code that still needs to be worked. So I'm going to skip on to the next video where we're going to be working a couple of things, and then I'll be setting up some additional exercises so that you can do the rest of the page on your own. Are you ready for that? I hope so.